Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be going over SHSAT math with geometry and angles. So let's move on to the next slide. So in this problem it says in the pyramid above each triangular face has the same area and the base MNPQ is a square that measures 8 centimeters on each side. If the length RS is 6 centimeters, what's the surface area of the pyramid excluding the base? So we're finding the surface area. Now let's label every single thing that we know. So we know that this is a square with side length 8, 8, 8, and 8. And we know that RS, this right here, would be 6. Okay. So in order to find the surface area, what we're actually finding is the area of this triangle and each of the other 3 triangles that are around it. So how do we find the area of one of these triangles? Well, we know the base of this triangle right here, and we know its height to be 6. And we know that the area of any triangle is 1/2 base times height, right? So the area of one of these triangles would be, let's go here, 1/2, the base is 8 times 8, and the height is 6. That would be 1/2 of 48, which would give us 24. Okay, this will be the area of one of these faces. And how many faces are there? Well, there's 4 faces. So we count this 4 times. So 4 times 24 is equal to 96, which gives us answer choice B. In this question, it says the perimeter of a rectangle is 510 centimeters. The ratio of the length to the width is 3:2. What are the dimensions of this rectangle? Okay, so let's write out what we know. If we draw this rectangle, it says the perimeter of the rectangle is 510 centimeters. So it would be like this, where x represents the width and y the length, let's say. And we're going to say that, well, finding the perimeter is just adding up all the sides. So there'll be 2x plus 2y is equal to 510. That's the first piece of information we know. The second piece of information we know is that, so y, well, we can scale this ratio down. So this ratio is the same thing as if we divide by 2, we get 1.5 to 1, which tells us that y is actually 1.5x. And if we replace that in this equation, that would give us 2x plus 2 times 1.5x, that's just 3x, is equal to 510, giving us 5x is equal to 510. If we divide 510 by 5, we'll get 1, 5, 0, 0, 0, 1, then 0, and then 2, so 102. Okay, so that means that x is equal to 102. And then the relationship we found between x and y, if this ratio is x, that means that we'd have to scale it up by 102 to get 102 on the x side, and scaling this up by 102 would be 1.5 times 102, which would be 3/2 times 102, which would give us 3 times, and then if we divide 102 by 2, we get 51, giving us 153 for the length of y. So that would give us answer choice F. Moving on to the next question. In this question, it gives us some sort of graph with a line, and it says, what is the area of the shaded region in the graph above? Well, the shaded region is this region right here, and it is in the form of a triangle, and it's asking for the area of this triangle. So what we do is we label its base and height. So in this case, the base would be this, and this would be its height. So the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. And in this case, both the base and the height are 1. Okay, so 1/2 times base times 1 times 1 gives us 1/2 of a square unit, because technically the measurements we took are in units, and we multiplied those two together, giving us units times units, otherwise known as units squared. So the answer would be B, 0.5 square units. In this question, it says, in the figure above, PQRS is a parallelogram. The measure of PQT is 50, as labeled, and the measure of PTQ is 70 degrees, as labeled. What's the measure of QRS? QRS is located right here. Okay, so how do we get this angle? Pause the video if you'd like to try it yourself, but I would personally make use of the angles we know and try to label as many angles in this diagram as we can. Well, we know that if we consider triangle PQT, this one right here, we see that we know 2 of the angles, meaning we can find the third. Well, the 3 angles in a triangle add to 180, so 50 plus 70. Well, if we label this as x plus x is equal to 180, giving us 120 plus x gives us 180, and x is equal to, if we subtract 120 from 180, we will get x is equal to 60. Okay, so instead of x, we can write 60. And here, you do have to use properties of a parallelogram. And in this particular case, we have to remember that opposite angles in a parallelogram are congruent, meaning QPT, this one right here, x, which we found out to be 60, is actually going to be congruent to QRS. This also applies for angles PST and PQR. So these will also be congruent, but now that we found QPT, this angle measure is actually congruent to this one. So we have found our answer. This is 60, giving us answer choice E. In this question, it says a large circular dinner plate has a radius of 20 centimeters. A smaller circular plate has a circumference of 20 pi centimeters and is placed in the center of the larger dinner plate. What's the area of the part of the larger dinner plate that is not covered by the smaller plate? Okay, well, what I always like to do for questions like these is draw a diagram. So let's draw the smaller plate like this and a larger plate like this. Okay, these aren't perfect circles, as you can tell, but we make do. Okay, so it says the larger one has a radius of 20. So since they share the same center, that length right there would be 20. Okay, and a smaller circular plate has a circumference of 20 pi. See, they're trying to be tricky and giving us the circumference instead of the radius. Well, in this case, we have to make use of the circumference formula, which is C is equal to 2 pi r. And we know the circumference. So C we know to be 20 pi. And now we have to solve for r. 2 pi r. Okay, well, I see a pi on this side and a pi on that side. We can just cancel those out by dividing by pi. And we divide by 2 to isolate r, giving us r is equal to 10 centimeters. Okay, so that means that this length right here, let's just do this one, from here to here is 10. Okay, and now we get to the question that's asking, what's the area of the part of the larger dinner plate, which is the outside one, that's not covered by the smaller plate? Well, the smaller plate covers this much, right? It's the interior, and the exterior that it isn't covered by, that it does cover, would be, well, we'd have to find the area of both. Well, what's the area of a circle with a radius of 20, which is the bigger plate? So we have to use our area formula for a circle. Area is equal to pi r squared. And we know the radius to be 20. 20 squared times pi is equal to 400 pi. Okay, So that's the area of the larger one. Now, in order to see how much isn't covered, we would have to find the area of the smaller one. So what's the area of a circle with a radius of 10 as we found here? That would be pi times 10 squared, giving us 100 pi. Okay, and now we have two numbers, but we're asking for actually the difference between them because not covered by this area. So we would have to do 400 pi minus 100 pi, which would give us 300 pi, giving us answer choice H. In this question, it says RST are the midpoints of sides of the square MNPQ as shown above. What's the sum of the areas of the shaded triangles? Okay, so we know that this is a square, so that means that this side is also 6 because we're given that here. And it also tells us that S and R and T are the midpoints. So that means that they cut the sides in half, so that means this side is 3, this is 3, 3, 3, 3, and 3. Okay, and now we actually have all the information we need to solve this problem. We have to find the sum of the areas of the shaded region, so this region and this region. And we're going to use our area of a triangle formula, 1/2 base times height. In this case, this is both the base and the height of each triangle is 3. So 1/2 base, which is 3, height, which is also 3, will give us 9/2, otherwise known as 4.5. Okay, but we're not done because we have two of these triangles. So it's actually what we're trying to find is 4.5 times 2, which would give us 9 square centimeters. So that would give us answer choice E. In this question, it says, what's the area of the shaded triangle shown above? And this is actually quite a hard question. It tells us to find it in terms of the variables it gave us. So first of all, we know that the height of this triangle is 4 because the y value, such that it goes like this to the top, has a height of 4. So that's an important part of finding the area of this triangle. Now, how do we find the base of this triangle, meaning from M to N? Well, we know that both M and N are positive. Positive. Okay, now if we were to find this length, we would have to subtract M from N, because M represents this much, and N represents this much. So if we subtract M from N, we would only get the distance from M to N. So that would mean that the base length is N minus M. So this is the base. We have the 1/2 in front because the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height, and the height is 4. And here we actually don't have to expand the parentheses because we would have the 4 and the 1/2, that would turn into a 2 times N minus M, which would correspond to answer choice C. So that is the answer to this question.